What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Leveled Up Life podcast. Brandon Courtney here with Paul McClain.
Good to be with you, bro.
Good to be with you, man. Helping people level up their life in all the areas that matter most: faith, family, fitness, finance, and franchise. Do us a favor, wherever you're watching from, wherever you're listening from, turn the volume up. Like, comment, subscribe, share this with somebody right now, man. We have been at this, I think it's episode number 71.
Yeah.
If I was looking 71. And man, it's a privilege to sit here with you every single week, bro. And I was reflecting on the way here, just thinking about what we're going to talk about today, which is, you know, the power of reflection. And we're halfway through the year now. It's almost like we're in the locker room at halftime, you know. But I was just thinking as we're driving here, dude, what a privilege it is to sit down with you every single week, man. I just feel like I leave this podcast every Thursday when we film, and dude, I feel like, man, challenged, encouraged, equipped, like strengthened, sharpened, and hopefully, man, that's what we're doing for people.
Well, I feel the same exact way, man. And I mean that. I mean, heck, we could do a whole podcast on like just getting around good people that can sharpen you, right? We talk a lot about the fact that iron sharpens iron. So it's like the first question is, man, what iron do you have in your life? And I consider you iron for sure, bro, in multiple different ways, not just business. And I think that's the other question. Like, you have iron, but in what category? Is it faith iron? Is it family iron? Is it fitness iron, right? And a lot of times, you know, you got to get somebody that's just in that one lane. Very, I think, uncommon to find somebody that can sharpen you in all those ways. I definitely consider you somebody that sharpens me in all those different areas.
You, bro.
Heck, we were talking about business right before this, and I was like, dude, what do you think? Because I value the opinion, and so I just encourage you guys to make sure to get people around you that you could say the same thing for, because that might be the very thing that as we do this mid-year reflection, that will take you to the next level. Where at the end of the year, you're like, man, thank God. Yeah. Like what are your thank God moments? Where you're like, thank God in July, I sat back and I just said, man, who am I spending time with that I should not be spending time with? And who am I spending time with that I should be spending more time with?
Bro, that's a sermon. Thank God moments.
Yeah.
That's a whole sermon right there.
Yeah, that was a God thought, because I didn't come up with that.
That's good.
It's not in my notes, even though I don't really have any notes. We're kind of coming to you raw and making sure we bring it to you the real way. But guys, we're going to really unpack specifically what can you do to make sure that at the end of the year, you look back and say, I hit my goal, right? Because a lot of times we get to a place where great frustration is birthed out of a time where we kind of like are thinking, I think it's too late. I think I messed it up. Or how about those games? I think about soccer. You know, we both coach, and or you get to the end of the game and you're like, I wish I would have just kind of been aware of that, like halfway through, because I think we could have won. Or like we're now doing film nights here at the office, and we'll watch film, and it's always interesting how when you're not in the game and you step out of the game and you actually get to see it without the emotions and distractions and things that are taking place, how you see it so differently, right?
Yep.
We're watching some of the stuff, and I'm like, I didn't know that like Ella always is making those runs, and she leads to a lot of her goals on the left side.
Right.
And then we start talking like, okay, well what does that change? It changes our strategy. So now we got to change, okay, let's try this person here, try this person there, because we'll win more games if we can play it that way.
100%.
And so a lot of what we're going to talk about today, guys, is like how can you heighten awareness to know what's working well, to do that even at a higher level, and what to eliminate, move out, or just completely delegate from what you're doing to get to the place you want to get to. And that's what we're going to kind of
I love that thought, man. I think we went to like the Leadership Roundtable a couple months back, beginning of the year, and I remember one of the speakers, he said, there's a difference between a player and a coach, right? And the difference is perspective, right? And oftentimes, you know, in our businesses, we're both. Like, we're the player at times, like we're in there doing the work, building the thing, going after, leading the teams. But at other times, we're the coach, like where we have a different perspective that no one else sees, and you see things differently. So whatever area of life you're leading in, whether that's even in your family, like sometimes, man, you're like as a dad, like, man, we're in the trenches right now, pouring into the kids. But there's some times where as a coach, like, you don't get to take time off. You have to go home and you got to watch the film. You got to reflect. You got a game plan for the next day, where the kids aren't necessarily thinking about that, you know? And so I just love that analogy. It's like, hey, even halfway through the year, this is a moment to watch some film, right? I remember in college, every Monday is film day. Like, you don't necessarily practice on those days, but you work out and you watch film. Why? To reflect on what just happened and to prepare for what's ahead. And I think sometimes we know the right things to do, but we don't often do them just because they've become like things of the past, or like I'm not in college anymore, so why would I watch film, right? But I think it's so important to have these moments. And I know we talked about like we need to get on this right now because the year's halfway over. Mm-hmm. And if we don't do this, like you can't expect what you don't inspect, right? I think Stephen Covey says that. And so you can't have a great expectation for the next 6 months if you can't reflect on the last 6 months, good or bad, right? And so there's some wins that I've definitely had, but there's also some losses, right? There's some mountain highs, but there's also been some valleys. And so what are the lessons that I learned out of those? What are the wins that I've taken out of those, and then how do I apply those to the next 6 months? And I just think that if you don't take time now, typically people will do it at the end of the year, right? It's like, hey, New Year's resolutions, here we go, let's set some goals. But I think if you can add another layer to that, which is midway through the year, man, you're just going to set yourself up for even more success. Because if not, you'll find yourself so far off track, right? It's like we talked about, if you take a plane from here to New York, you're just a couple little coordinates off, you're in Miami, right? And that might not be a bad thing, but you might also end up in like West Virginia or somewhere in the mountains. And so, so you gotta pause and reflect to see if you're on the right track, going towards the goals that you had for yourself. And so talk about what that means to you.
Well, I mean, I started thinking about like, sometimes we're doing the right thing but there still needs to be an adjustment for that right thing to actually grow roots and produce the fruit it has for you, but you don't realize it until you reflect and pause. Like I was thinking about this the other day, like, Parker's 13. And so like I have a regimen and routine. We've talked about on the podcast certain things that we do with the kids. And like for me, connecting with her has been difficult lately. So I still have the concepts, the disciplines that I know will provide fruit for her, right? That'll help her, but it's not hitting, right? Now I could continue on, and the reality is since January, I've just kind of continued on like acting like it was effective because I know that they're good, opposed to pausing. And I just did this, about a month ago. I paused and said, like how can I connect with her? Because you can have all the greatest things to communicate and help somebody, but if the relationship isn't there, it won't be received. And so it's like it's the right stuff, but the wrong soil. And so I was like, man, what can I do to connect with her? Because I'm trying to figure it out. Like on the drive back from school, like, hey, how was your day? Good. And I'll even use like great sales tactics, like good, like mirroring.
Right.
It's like, yeah, good. Like, yeah, good. It's like, yeah, good. Like it didn't work. Like I can't get. And so what I realized is like she loves to play like ping pong and these other things. And so I'm actually redoing the garage and cleaning it all. I was telling you about it, so I can specifically put a ping pong table in there because she. Like that's a way where we can connect. Like we go in, we have a good time. Pickleball, same thing. She enjoys it.
She's a beast, by the way.
Yeah, she is a beast. And so Saturday, like I went out there and I intentionally did that because those are times where I can actually connect with her. All the other ways that I've tried to figure out doesn't work, but that does work. Now that doesn't come to me unless I reflect. And how I reflected was like, what have been the moments in the past 6 months that I found the greatest connection with Parker? Well, I thought like, oh, when we were on vacation at Paradise Point, we were playing pickleball. Like there was a way to connect, and I could just tell you as I unpack, Brand, like a lot of the breakthrough moments in any area of my life have come from those pauses and reflection.
Yeah, that's good.
Like even I remember in business getting to a place where I kind of built a business that I started to hate. Because it just took all my time. I just felt like I wasn't doing the things I really loved and enjoyed, which was like sales training and leadership development. I was doing all these different stuff, taking phone calls from a new agent, answering questions about this product and that. And I was just like, there's got to be something different. But I couldn't find the different. I knew I wanted it, but I didn't know how to get there because I didn't have a pause. I was just doing it each day. And I remember pausing and being in prayer about it because a lot of times the best thoughts I've got to come through prayer and me just seeking God and like being still and hearing His word, that still whisper, right? And I feel like that's what it was. And it was like, get a new agent mentor. And I remember getting a new agent mentor, and that was one of the greatest things that led to great growth that year. Was they took on this role, which allowed me to go step back and do different things. And it's been the case for that for every single thing, right? But the pause is essential. Even think about COVID. Like that was a great national pause.
Yeah.
Like, dude, you were like, whatever you were doing, like you weren't doing it anymore when that hit, right? Like it's funny to think that that was just like 5 years ago, dude. But like, and it's easy to think that like we're back to how weird it was.
Yeah, it was a weird time.
Dude, it was nuts. And all of a sudden everything shifted and paused, but so many good things came from that pause.
Yeah.
Like in businesses, like the Zooms and the way people did meetings, and like, dude, that allowed businesses to thrive. We started doing telesales.
Yeah.
In insurance, dude, that changed everything. So now I'm not driving 5 hours to like Fresno or whatever. I can spend those 5 hours actually with a client on the phone. So many things happen great with a pause.
I love it, man. I love that you said you can be doing the good things, but it's landing on the wrong soil. Which, man, I think that's so true, because I think the heart of every leader, especially if you're listening to this podcast, is like, you want to get better. But the truth is, just because you're doing some of the right things doesn't mean it's the right thing at the right season, or you're in the right vehicle to be doing it. Yeah. And so I just love the thought of, and COVID's such a good example of a massive scale reset.
Yeah.
And yeah, you could look back at that time and go, well, there was so much bad that happened during that time. Yeah, I mean, we're not denying that, but now you could look and see all the fruit that came out of that. Man, our church was birthed out of that season, right? We were able to reach so many people that felt isolated and disconnected and alone, and they found a home at God's house.
Yeah.
Because of that season. Like, there's so much good that came out of that reflection. And not only that, it caused people to think differently, to strategize differently, to be more innovative, to get their creativity back. And I think that's what happens sometimes when you're doing something. Like the Bible says, like, don't grow weary while doing good. I think sometimes we can grow weary when we've been doing something for such a long time, right? Because you just become used to that thing. Like, even in a relationship, even in your marriage, like, dude, we're going on 12 years. I think you guys are going on 18.
Yeah, tomorrow, dude.
Which doesn't even make any sense.
Years, bro.
It's insane. But like, even in a relationship for that amount of time, like, you can grow weary. But if you pause and you reflect and you go, hey, how can we get stronger in the next 18? How can we get better? How can we grow closer together? How can we be better parents? But they only come if you take a step out and go and really look at, like, get a bird's eye view of what's actually happening. Because when you're in it, it's like you don't see it.
Yeah, you don't see. It's like golfing, right? Like, why am I slicing the ball?
Yeah.
Like, you have to sit back and take this out of body experience. But this is why.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. So, like, as you got started into like the church, right? This is in 2020. COVID's taking place. A lot of reasons to say, like, okay, God, not now. Like, let's just wait to get it all going, and all the reasons why it wouldn't work. But I believe, like, step one in, like, recalibrating your goals, and this is be for everybody looking at the five F's in your life. Like, what are the chief objectives, the specific goals to accomplish? Like, how did you focus on, like, your desired outcomes? Like, was that what was pulling you? Like, instead of, like, looking at the pain of trying to get going where the odds were stacked against you, like, how did you kind of navigate through that and keep your mind right where you kept moving?
That's good. I think number one, I think every good entrepreneur or leader is looking to fill a need in the market, right? And so typically businesses are birthed not because you just have a desire to do something. It's because you've identified a need and you said, I have the skill or service to fill that need, right? And so I think, especially for us, like, we're a young family. Like, we're surrounded by young families, and I'm looking around at the landscape of the churches from my point of view, right? I can't speak from everyone, but from my point of view, it's like, hey, there's a huge need for young families, for entrepreneurs, for leaders, for, like, people who want to grow with God, but just for whatever reason, like churches aren't meeting that need. And I felt like God put the desire on my heart to begin to fill that need, right? And so I think, number one, you have to have a big enough burden. Like, you have to have a big enough why to push past all the life circumstance. And so it's like, yeah, dude, we should have waited till 2023 to, like, get a building, raise money, like, have leaders in place. Like, of course, that would have been a logical thing. But the faith thing says, hey, step out and allow God to, like breathe His grace on it. You know what I mean? And looking back, it's like, I'm thankful that we did it that way, because it made us tough. Like, it made us, like, no matter what storm comes our way, it's like, hey, we can face it, because, dude, we've done church in a parking lot. We got kicked out of a building our third service. Like, we've ran out of money. Like, we've, like, paid the neighbors rent so we can use their thing for kids care. You know what I'm saying? Like, dude, we've been through a lot of stuff we don't necessarily talk about, but it's like, hey, if you have a big enough burden, a big enough why, you can push past whatever wind, whatever storm, whatever giants coming your way, And so I think that was probably the biggest motivator. It's like, man, we wanted to, people were hungry. People still are hungry. And so I think God just put that desire on the heart to feed them the best way we knew how.
Man, as we step into this, I'd love to just kind of share a little bit about yourself, like your story, how you got into business, kind of the struggles of the business and kind of where you're at now. And we'll unpack, obviously there's a lot to that journey. We'll unpack some of the big takeaways to provide the value to the audience today, man.
Yeah, so, I'm 34 years old, and I got into, my business just like everyone else, by accident. And so I like to say I was born out of a slot machine. My father's been in the casino business, for over 30 to 40 years now, and I've done pretty much every position inside the casino. And at the time, I was a blackjack dealer and then also a general manager at the gym. So I would wake up 1 o'clock in the morning, go to the casino at 2 a.m., work from 2 a.m. to 8 a.m., get off work, drive over to the gym, sleep in the parking lot for half an hour, and then work from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. as a general manager, and usually get off late. So I would be sleeping, 2-3 hours a night. Don't recommend it, but it was just a season of my life. And then one day I got offered an opportunity to start a solar company. Someone was bringing a solar manufacturer from Europe to the U.S., and I quit both my jobs for no money guaranteed. And at 25 years old, they handed me a flash drive and folder and was like, "All right, kid, go build a company." And we did. We took that company from 0 to 30 million or over 30 million the first 5 years, and just continued to build up from there. And then 2 years ago, I partnered with my best friend. His name is Michael Sandoval, and I opened up my own office in Palm Desert in March of 2023, right during the start of the solar Armageddon, where California changed the rules and solar companies were going out of business left and right. And I kind of just walked into that fire. And
you're like, this is the perfect time.
Yeah. The math was just mathing at the time.
You guys are good at timing. You started church during COVID, which made sense too. Hey, mask up, dog.
Killing it on timing.
But it's so funny because during the time, everyone was so pessimistic, and it was really hard to start at that time. But for us, solar has never been better. The opportunity's never been bigger, and we've just been blessed. Solar is one where they call it the solar coaster. Because it's ups and downs. It makes you want to throw up, and sometimes you're screaming, and sometimes it's a thrill, but it's always a wild ride. And we've been able to navigate through that chaos and find success.
Well, dude, I think that's a great point we can unpack, right? The power of adaptability, because I think every business and just every area of your life, we're talking about fitness, right? So there's people on here man, I'm on a fitness roller coaster, right? If we're talking about faith, dude, I feel like I'm on a faith roller coaster. I feel like every area of our life that matters most, we can sometimes find ourselves on the roller coaster. The goal is to not jump off when you hit the dip, right? To stay on it and stay on it with that emotional stability. And so I think that'd be one thing I really want to unpack is the power of adaptability and how have you navigated that. But before I get to that, man, I want to ask you, so a lot of your beginning before you stepped into really where you're called to be now, which is running this solar company, one of the largest ones in Coachella Valley, your work ethic was built before that. Mm-hmm. Right. And so I think that a lot of times it's easy for somebody to, kind of discard some of the character that's being built before the big kind of headline where they actually make it. Does that make sense? And so kind of talk about how has that played a role, that character that you built and that work ethic you built prior to getting into the solar business. How did that play a part, if it did, and just kind of talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, honestly, it's all thanks to my father, what I saw. I remember I was just a blackjack dealer at the time, and I was, I think, 23 years old, and I got home. I would work 3 days a week, 8 hours a day, and my dad at the time was a math teacher and a blackjack dealer, so he was putting in 80, 90 hours a week. And one day he got home, and I was on the couch, and he sat down next to me, and he just gave this big sigh. He's like, "Man, I'm so tired. I just put in 90 hours this week, and my body's exhausted." And it just hit me at that point. I was like, I'm half this guy's age, and he's putting in 2 to 3 times the amount of hours per week. Like what am I doing?
Yeah.
And from then on, you know, I mean, it just created this huge work ethic in me, and I just wanted to always be the hardest working person, you know, like in the room. And it all started from there. And I've learned that things don't come, you know, easy. When I quit, you know, like both my jobs to start the solar company, we had to, you know, I blew through all my savings just going through and learning, you know, the craft. And we got to a point where it was either like knock or die, and we had to like hit pavement. And I don't know if you guys ever been to Palm Springs before, but it's 120 degrees. Like we would go out there, like our iPads would fry in the first like 5 minutes. Like we would have to like go and run for a tree to like get some shade to be able to turn it back on. And that really just shaped everything for me. I always said like door knocking like in the desert was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. But it showed me that like good things don't come easy. Like you have to be able to take the hard road, and for those that can be able to endure that and overcome it, like success is on the other side.
Man, I love that.
Dude, I mean, the preacher in me is going, dude, the door knocking in the desert. That's the title right there.
Just dripping, man. Just
a sermon right there, bro.
Sweat. And the thing is too, like you're like, you know, I've never done it before, and I remember like I was like my you know, my business partner, he did door knocking like in Fresno, and he worked for Solar City, and he was accustomed to it. So for him, it was super natural. And my first day going out there, I was so nervous, and I would be in the car. I would be blasting like Les Brown or TD Jakes or something like that to get the motivation. And then like I would look at the door. I'm like, I'm gonna start here, and I'd go up and down the street, just like building that momentum to do the first knock. And I wouldn't do it. I'd go home, and then my room, you know, I was, you know, living with my business partner at the time, and he was just like, "Did you do it? Did you knock?" And I was like, I couldn't do it. He's like, "Man, Mohammed," and it took me a while to be able to like overcome that fear, because I was the 300th person there. Like solar was so saturated at the time. Right. I was like, what could I possibly offer that would be different than the other 299 people that were there before me? But that's when it really realized that, yes, I might be the 300th person there, but this is the first time that they've seen me. You know, this is the first opportunity, and I've worked harder than the other 299, you know, people. So I really had to rewire my brain and reshape it to be able to like really take that obstacle and just conquer that fear.
I love that, man. I'm thinking, I mean, there's so many lessons in what you're just saying. Number one, it's like having the confidence in who you are. But that doesn't come like easily, right? and so my question for you is like, what gave you the confidence to leave 2 steady jobs, right? You said you were doing blackjack, which we can unpack that. That's like there's probably many stories that you can tell us about the long nights in there.
We should play some blackjack.
Yeah.
We'll have you deal it up. We'll put some money on there.
But also like you were the general manager of a successful gym, right? And then you were essentially approached by someone you didn't know about solar, and then saw an opportunity. So what was it like? Was there something on the inside of you that said like, man, there's more to life than what I'm doing now? And then what gave you the confidence to step into that? Because I think a lot of people, they're looking for the right vehicle, right? So especially with the world we live in now, you see everyone else's life, and so interest is peaked. Like interest in other things at an all-time high because you see everyone else's life. And so I think a lot of people are living the 9-to-5 life going, man, I want to do solar, I want to do insurance, I want to do real estate because other people are killing it. But most people never do it because it's like, I don't have the faith, I guess you would say, or I don't have the courage to step out and do it. Like, what gave you the courage to actually do it and blow through your savings, like you said?
Yeah.
Without even like, dude, I've never knocked a door in my life. Like, why'd you do that?
I mean, first of all, like you said, I was working 18, 20 hours a day. I would sleep, like 2 hours a night. Like if I wanted to go on a date, like I had to be okay with giving up sleep.
You're like, come to work with
period.
Me. Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I would have to give up sleep at all just to be able to go out on a date. And so I really wanted to get down to one high incoming, job to be able to have some sort of work-life balance. And I think coming from the casino industry, like I was one to gamble, right? Yeah. And I was one to be able to take risk. And I knew that if I was going to be able to take, a gamble like at 23, 25 years old, like this was the time to be able to do it. And and I did, I gave up, like both of all my income and just be able to take on that opportunity, head on. And I feel that most times in life when I hear like the big successful like entrepreneurs, they all did that. You have to be able to be okay pushing your chips in the middle and losing. And I feel too like when you do lose, and you lose it all, it's a very, very tough season. But then when you bounce back, you realize that, like, if this is the worst case scenario, you know, and I've been able to overcome this, it creates this like spirit in you to be able to be like, okay, like I've already lost everything before and I've gained it back. I can do this again and again and again. And you just build this resilient spirit inside you.
I mean, it's like the worst thing that's gonna happen. You get another job at the casino.
Yeah.
And you start working at the gym again. You know, I love that. And I think most entrepreneurs, like you say, have that mentality. It's like, what's the worst that's gonna happen? Especially being younger. It's like, well, the worst case is I go back and live with my parents. Right, I go get a job. I go, you know, just look for the next opportunity. But I just, even for me, as I'm reflecting back on my journey, there was times where I would do these travel trips, and I was like, dude, I don't have any money for a hotel. I would sleep in my car, like in a 24-hour fitness parking lot. Like I wouldn't say anything about it at the time. Like no one would know. But like, as you're talking, man, I'm reflecting. Like that's probably more people's stories than not that have ever had any sort of success. Like it wasn't given to them. It wasn't just like, you know. They didn't hit a lotto. It was birthed out of hard work, out of like risk, right? So talk about like what that transition was like for you, you know, driving up and down the road, being super motivated. Like you can't listen to a Les Brown, you know, track and not be motivated, but then you didn't do it, right? So talk about like the mentality that you had to go from like just being motivated to actually putting boots on the ground and actually knocking. Like what was the transition there to go like, you know what, I am the 300 person, but they've never met me. Like I'm Mohammed. Like they talked to Bassem, they talked to Brandon, they didn't talk to Mohammed, right? So talk about that kind of mentality shift that took place there to go from 0 to 30 million in 5 years.
Yeah, I think you have to be okay losing. You have to be okay getting rejected. And I feel like so many times we do that, even if it's like the dating, right? They go up there to talk to the cute girl, like at the party. You know, a lot of us will rather just stay and be a wallflower and not and take that chance. And so, you know, the whole door knocking and going out there and prospecting, that really taught me that like, hey, rejection is okay. You don't need everyone to believe in you. You just need a few people to be able to appreciate your presence. And in that, it's that rewiring of the brain, like I keep on, you know, saying, is that you have to be, you know what I mean, just completely, you know, like goal oriented and be able to see that. Because I love that, you know, Simon Sinek, he talks about his bagel story, you know, on there, how at the end of the race, they're giving out, you know, free bagels, and he's like, hey, come on, man, let's go get, you know, a free bagel. And the guy he's with, he's like, oh no, there's such a long line. He's like, yeah, but free bagel. And so there's two type of people. There's people that see the bagel to see the prize, and they're willing to go after it. And there's people that only can see the line and see what, you know, is preventing them from getting there. So I think you have to be able to be, you know what I mean, just so focused in on your goal, and just know that, hey, even if there is pain, even if there is rejection, it's only temporary. But doing nothing, like that's the worst position and the worst place to be in.
That is powerful, man. Yeah. I think it's like the interpretation you put on the pain, right? Like, what does the pain mean? Like, so Mohammed, for me, like when I was in the field and I'd have a day where, you know, this is back when I was running like 4 hours, like Brandon was saying, like we drive 4 or 5 hours to go see clients face to face. This is before like, hey, just call them in an air conditioned office, you know, watching some ESPN in the background and make a close, right? Like this is a different ball game. But I remember driving out there and having like a stack full day, just like, dude, I'm about to kill it. You know, I'm going to retire after this day. And then like, you know, nobody shows up. And I'm calculating like, dude, how much gas I spent, my depreciation on my car because I just put another 200 miles on it. So I'm like, I'm thinking about all this stuff. And remember, a big tipping point for me was just realization is like, this is good. Yeah. This is a good thing, because this is why most people quit. And if I could just get past this, if I just push through it, there's going to be a harvest. There's going to be some great fruit. I'm going to see this next level come to pass. And it was just a different interpretation on pain, from like, this sucks, and maybe this is evidence to say like I shouldn't be doing this, to really the evidence of the fact that when I push through and I continue to do this, it's going to be beautiful. Like, there's going to be another level to hit. You know, for you kind of talked about, I love how you know, you're so vulnerable. Like, man, I got out. I was doing the things I was told to do to encourage myself. I was listening to the podcast, right? Because I tell people all the time, like, man, what's your consumption, bro? Like, what are you consuming? You know, you got to get your mind right. But you were doing the things to get your mind right, but yet you were still like, man, I didn't knock on the door. What was the tipping point? When did you go and actually knock on the door? And do you recall like a specific thing that shifted that was like, all right, I'm gonna knock?
I looked at my bank account, and it was like I said, it was either like knock or die. And sometimes you have to get there.
Good. Yeah,
you have to get to. Good. You have to burn the boats, right? And be like, this is my only way. I remember when I started my office, you know, like when I was a CEO of, you know, a company at 27 years old, and you know, I fully invested everything into it. Every single Friday, you know, I was giving up my check to pay for my employees. You know, Monday morning, the owner of the company would come in and be like, Mohammed, payroll's $40,000. There's no money for material, no money for permits. You have 3 days where no one gets paid. And I had to figure it out every single week for a long time. And, you know, when I exited that company, they unfortunately stole everything from me. You know what I mean? I walked away with nothing after 7 years of just breaking my back. And that was a very frustrating experience because I was looking around and I saw everyone have more than me, and I was just like, I've worked my butt off for the last 8 years. I've built this big company, and I had a talk with God, and I was just like, why me? This is unfair, you know, in that. But sometimes, you know, He's going to be able to reposition you. And then I go and I start my company, and I remember, you know, we went from like professionals of like being able to do a solar proposal to when California made, you know, the switch to NEM 3.0, solar went from, you know, multiplication to calculus overnight. And we didn't even know how to make a proposal. And that's when I started my office. And we, for 4 months, like my goal was to make $1. It really got down to that point. It was just to be able to get a small little victory, because I knew that small victories create momentum. And I was just like, I was trying to catch all the money that I lost in one sitting. And I was like, Mohammed, that's not going to work that way. You have to get back to what made you great, to what, you know, how you build that first company. And it was all the small steps that was able to create the momentum. And so I brought it down to such a micro level to like, just make $1. Do one little thing that's going to be able to move you forward. And then, you know, $1 turned to one deal, and one deal turned into one big month, and we just started to, you know, go from there. But I remember I was cleaning solar panels, you know, for reviews at one point. You know, like there was no, you know, we were still trying to figure out and break the code and stuff. And I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna just move. I'm just going to create some action. And I was just like, hey, if you would, you know, be willing to leave me a Google review on my company and my character, like I'll wash your solar panels for free. And I was up in the summer just washing away and stuff, just trying to create some momentum. And now we're like one of the highest rated solar companies in the desert, and we just celebrated our biggest month last month. And you know, things come into fruition, but it takes some small steps first.
Dude, it just seemed like a great story of like humility and just like willing to just say, what's my next best move? Like not getting so hyper focused on a change or this took place, this circumstance happened, and now I'm in a bad position. And I think that probably is a testament to your adaptability, is just saying, okay, this is what it is. Like this took place, this happened, this law changed, this shifted, but what's my next best move right now? And I think in any business, there's gonna be seasons of that, right? Like the church, when COVID happened, like that's just life, right? Like stuff just happens that's external, but it's our internal choice to decide, does this become a propellant for us to get to where we want to go, or is this something that just hinders us and stops us from going where we desire to go and hitting these goals? And that's what I'm getting from you. You know, Mohammed's like, dude, those things took place. There was probably businesses that went out of business because they were so hung up on the fact that like, this isn't fair. Like, I don't like calculus. I was good with multiplication. Yeah. Like all those things where they're just like, this is too much. And they weren't humble enough to say, okay, God, like, this is what it is. What's my character? What's my nature? Who have I become in this journey? What did I do to get here? Man, I was humble. I was willing to pick up a broom. I was willing to do these things. And so let me get back to that. And what's my next best move? And your best move was just to get Google reviews. Yeah. Not knowing that probably served you 90 days later with your business getting picked back up and things shifting and going in the right direction. So, man, I love that. I mean, as far as adaptability, what would be like your feedback? So somebody's on here, they're building a business, right? There's been some external things that have happened. Maybe it's recent, maybe it's a long time ago, and they still have not yet let go of this, like, man, the good old days, I didn't have to deal with this. The good old days, it was so much easier, right? They've not yet adapted because they're stuck in the good old days and they're no longer looking forward and asking what's the next best move. What would be your feedback to them to help them kind of get out of that, adapt, evolve, and get to a better space?
Yeah, so I created this formula for success. I said success equals speed times opportunity times volume. Speed is the rate of which you adapt to it. So let's say, for example, let's use TikTok, right? TikTok's a big craze right now. And I made a mistake by not creating a TikTok. I was there. I was like one of my biggest regrets. Like I was there 2020, during COVID on there. And so speed is the ability to adapt to what the next trend is going to be. Not what it is, but what it's going to be. And then, opportunity is how big it is. One of the biggest lessons I learned in life is it's not how hard you row, but what boat you're in. Yeah. And so, we see, okay, how big of a lever, is this, opportunity? And then you have volume. So using TikTok as an example, if you posted, in COVID of 2020 on TikTok, I mean, you were going viral for anything. Because there was such, especially as a guy, at the time it was 9-to-1, female to male ratio. And so with that, the speed is a 10 out of 10 because you adapted very quick during COVID. The opportunity was a 10 out of 10 because you can see that like now being a social media like influencer and stuff, like how big of an opportunity that is. But the last thing too is volume. When you have the first two, you have to be able to put in, that amount of work. So those that are like, several million on TikTok is because they adapted quick, they saw the opportunity, but they put the volume in. Imagine you putting $10,000 into Bitcoin in 2013. Yeah. Like, what is that worth? And so, my advice is to be able to look at that, is to be able to see, where the opportunities are like within your business. And when the deck is hot, when there's the opportunities there, is you got to push the chips in the middle and take advantage of it because things do cool down, things do slow down. So when it's hot, you've got to be able to just take that risk, put all the chips in, and at that point you'll reap the reward.
I know that this is like an insight to a conversation we'd probably have anyways, and I think it's going to bless you guys because the truth is there's certain things that really are foundational or catalytic to like every area of your life. And so if you're not reaching where you want to reach with your faith or maybe your family, you're like, man, I think like I'm doing well financially, but I just feel like my marriage isn't where it could be. I feel like my relationship with my kids isn't where it could be. Yeah. Or maybe like you're killing it financially and the family's great, but you're like looking in the mirror like, dude, my fitness is not where it could be. That's kind of the struggle, right? Is like a leveled up life is a life where you're feeling fulfilled in all those areas, where every one of those areas there's some progression. And typically, and I would say 99% of the time, if you feel like you're missing it in one of those areas, it would be tied back to a schedule. Yep. Like there's a lack of schedule. Maybe there's things in your schedule that have taken precedence, that have become a priority that are really not a priority, but your schedule reflects that this is what you're valuing. And I always say, like, if you want to know what somebody values, look at their schedule, look at their checkbook, right? And today, we're going to unpack the schedule. And sometimes you've just got things in the schedule that shouldn't be, and there should be things in the schedule that should be. And I think that when you heighten awareness of what your schedule looks like and you actually audit it, yeah, and you interrogate the reality of what your schedule looks like, it could change your life. Maxwell says if you want to know where somebody's going in the next 5 years, just look at their schedule. Yeah. What does your schedule look like? You could predict where your marriage is going to be, where your relationship with your kids is going to be, where your fitness is going to be, where your business is going to be. And so it matters, right? It matters significantly. And so, Brand, I want to kind of ask you this as we start into this. And guys, I promise you, you're going to want to share this. You're going to want to subscribe. This is going to be one that you kind of study and go through and actually reconcile periodically as far as, okay, that makes sense. How well am I doing that? And how do I know that? Because I do this, right? Like I do this all the time. I listen to a podcast on scheduling and I'll go back through and it reminds me of like, I've been going so fast, I've not paused and actually interrogated what's going on. But for somebody watching this, Brand, that's like, maybe it's a business owner. Maybe it's a mom that's not in business. She's raising kids. Maybe it's an employee. Maybe somebody's self-employed. Why is it important for every person to have a schedule? Like, why does it matter for everybody? Yeah. Even not just a self-employed person.
Well, the truth is everyone has a schedule right now. Whether it's a good schedule or a bad schedule is debatable, right? And so for me, I remember when I was first getting into entrepreneurship, leading a business, I remember the first year I made 6 figures, right? And so I'm like, dude, I'm crushing it, made $100,000, that a little over, like I think it was like 111. And I remember at the end of the year, I had no money. And I was like you get like a ring, you get like a watch, you get celebrated, you get all this stuff, right, for making like finally crossing that threshold. And you look back, it's like, dude, I still had zero money. And the problem wasn't the business, the problem was me, right? It was I wasn't managing my money the right way. And so I think when you and you know, your time is like money. If you don't manage it, it's gonna fleet. It's gonna go away. It's gonna disappear on you. And then, you know, you'll get to the end of the year and be like, what the heck did I do with this year? I didn't get anything accomplished, right? I didn't go after my goals. I didn't progress in any area. And so number one, I think it's important to be intentional. And we're not talking about money, we're talking about time, but it's so important to be intentional with your time, because if you're not, you'll lose it. Like it's fleeting, it runs away. And so for me, I think the worst feeling that I can feel is getting to the end of my day and feeling like I didn't accomplish anything, right? And I think so many of us get so distracted by just life's busyness, and it's so easy to do that if you're not intentional with your time, like for me, I don't say like white space. For me, white space is like rest. Like I try to plan in some white space in my day to like, we talked about this, like pause, reset, you know, recalibrate. To me, it's not white space. To me, it's wasted space. Like, so if I have wasted space in there, that's when distraction comes. That's when like you get the phone call and now you're outside for 2 hours on the phone. That's when you're, you know, working in the garden when you should be working on your business or whatever the case is. So number one, just to answer your question, I think everyone should have a schedule because it makes you locked in and 100% on the thing that you're supposed to be doing. Right. And so the worst for me is like, we're talking about going on vacation in a couple of weeks. The worst thing for me is like to be on a vacation thinking about business. Or be on a vacation thinking about something else. So wherever I'm at, I want to be there 100% because I've lived that life before where you're like 60% in on everything and it's a terrible feeling. And so I think number one, everyone should have a schedule because when you have things on your schedule that are of importance, number one, it keeps you focused, it keeps you on time, and it keeps you intentional about the thing that you're actually doing. So whether you're a mom at home, like I was telling Mariah, she's, you know, and same for Tosh, we're trying to, you know, figure out the homeschool schedule. What's that look like?
The mom and the teacher now.
Yeah, the mom, the teacher, the chef, the lunch lady, the janitor. And so we're trying to figure out what this looks like. And I was telling her, like, you just got to be, like, when they're in class in regular school, they don't get to just walk out and go get some food.
Right.
They don't just go to the bathroom whenever they want. Like everything is planned and scheduled according to the day. So the same has to be true for you. You know, so if you're doing, you know, first period, do first period. Don't start cooking eggs during first period. You know, and so I think it applies to everyone, everyone's life. Like you just have to have a schedule because if not, you'll drive yourself insane. You'll get to the end of the day or the end of the month or end of the year and be like, what did we accomplish? And it's a feeling that no one. I certainly don't want. Right. So
I love that, dude. I think it's so true. And I think everybody can relate to those days where they feel like they get to the end of the day, they're like, what was done? And then you get to those days where you're like, you feel so fulfilled where the day can continue on and you've got enough energy to keep going. Because like you were doing the thing you needed to do in that moment. And it's usually not going to happen by default, right? So typically without something in your schedule, you typically don't by default do the best thing.
Right.
Like, you know, like that was the best thing I could have done from 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock. Usually not, you know, but by design, then you can. And so I love, you know, looking at like being a self-employed person or running a business. I think it translates also to somebody that's working a job. There's these same concepts, somebody that's you know, stay-at-home mom or whatever they find their roles and goals are in their life. I think this is applicable to everybody that everything's got to be planned, right? And somebody's like, well, I want to be spontaneous. Okay, well put in spontaneous time, right, where you could just spontaneously do something. But I promise you, if that's what you're going for, you're not going to hit the levels that God's called you to in your life. It's got to be intentional. It's got to be by design. And so, you know, it's kind of like one of those things where it's paradoxical. I see most, like if I use an insurance agent, we can pack that path. A lot of insurance agents, they get into this career really excited about the fact that they have freedom of schedule. Like, oh, this is so great. I don't have a guy to report to. I don't have a boss to report to. I don't have to report to her. Like I'm good. I'm free. And the reality is, I think that's the biggest reason why people fail is because they look at it as such a great gift opposed to a high responsibility.
Yeah, very good.
So now you're actually the employer. You have to schedule yourself and structure the schedule and sit there before the week starts, the day starts and say, what's the most important thing I could do today to be a successful business person? But once you craft that, right, or if it's like my wife and your wife, like as they put together their schedule, I told Tasha, I said, like, what's the schedule? Like, then you just have to execute. Now it's like, okay, I know from 12 o'clock to this, 3 o'clock, I'm doing this. And then after that, I'm doing this. And then you just have to execute. So now you have to just ask yourself as you go back and you kind of do checkups on yourself and reconcile, like, okay, what should I be doing right now? Got it. And you can set alarms on your phone. Like, I got like 30 alarms, so it'll just go off like, all right, and it'll check me, like, am I doing the thing I know I need to be doing right now? And so the alarm sets me back on track to saying, I got distracted. Let me get back in focus, because it helps me. But I just think that when you're sitting there and you're designing your schedule, if you don't put together a schedule, you're going to end up having to go back to work for somebody to put together a schedule for you.
Yeah, very good.
So it's like a lot of times you think like, oh, I'm self-employed, I don't got to put together a schedule. Well, then you end up becoming the person in a position to get a schedule. Do I think about like I saw this statistic on people that go to prison, and it said that like something crazy, like 90% plus or what have you. It was a big number. Go back to prison once they leave prison. And the reason being is like a lot of times they want freedom. Like, I want to get out, right? But in prison, they have a schedule.
Yeah.
And they get told when to wake up, when to go to the yard, when to eat. They get out and they have this freedom. They have this open schedule. They don't know what to do with it. And so therefore they go and do the very thing, a crime or something, to put them back in a place where its schedule is in place for them. And so I think every human being, you think you don't want to have a schedule. The truth is you want to have a schedule, but you want to have the right schedule.
Very good.
The things that you want to actually do. And so that takes planning, preparing to be able to execute on it.
It's funny you say that, because I mean, I definitely didn't have a coming out of prison moment, but I remember coming out of college, and for 8 years through high school and then through college, like all my workouts were planned. Like, I never even, from the time you get to ninth grade, I never even thought about putting together a workout, because you just show up and the coaches are there to tell you exactly what to do, when to be there, what to eat. Like, it's just dialed in for you. So for 8 straight years, that's all I did. And I remember, I mean, I probably took longer to recover from that than I should have, because there was probably like an 8-year period of time where I was like lost in the wilderness as far as like my fitness routine. It was just like so sporadic, because I couldn't figure out who I was in that space, right? Because for 8 years, it was dialed in for me, so I couldn't formulate a thought around like how to actually do it for myself. So the struggle is real, right? And so talk about from an entrepreneur perspective, like someone going from a 9-to-5 or a job, and now they're making that switch into the entrepreneurial space. Because I love what you said. Most people think like, man, I got all this time freedom now, but the truth is like you don't have that yet. Like you got time to do whatever you want, but now because no one's telling you what to do anymore, but you got to tell yourself what to do. So it's a different level of responsibility. And I think a lot of, entrepreneurs, business people struggle to make that shift mentally, right? So talk about like what can an entrepreneur or an agent going from a 9-to-5 to now self-employed, like what are some things they should be doing? Is it like environment? How does that person lay out their schedule? Because I know for me, it's a hard transition, right? Yeah. So once you're self-employed for a while, it's like, okay, the buck stops with me. I get it now. I'm 37. So it's like, I understand it now. But at 22, you don't get it. 25, you don't get it yet. So what could, some youngsters coming up be doing now to not have to go through 10 years of hardship? It makes sense?
100%, dude. Well, I think you look at, first of all, priorities, right? Like, so, like I enjoy certain things. The way I've always looked at, like I enjoy, watching a football game. Dude, I enjoy like eating a good steak. Like I enjoy those things, but my joy is not found in those things. My joy is found in like stewarding my time well and getting better in these areas of our lives that matter most. And so what I know is like a good day is not a day that was just full of enjoyment. It's a day that I was diligent and stewarded my time well. And I found that out being self-employed, that me just taking off a random day and going to do this or this or that, I never felt great about it. I didn't really have joy. I enjoyed it for that moment, but in the end, it actually stole my joy, because my joy is found in serving people, serving my schedule, being there for my family, like being intentional. Yeah. So I think you map it out and say, okay, well, what's important to you? So in the beginning of the morning, I know that if I'm self-employed, the lid is me. So I don't want to go out there, and I've seen this happen multiple times, and I always would look at those lottery winner stories where, like, how many people win the lottery, and then, like, I think it's like over 90% within a year, they're bankrupt. It's like, dude, how is that possible? Well, it's because they didn't develop their thought process and mindset to a level where they could actually steward that money. So like you said, it just ran away from them, right? It was just gone. And so I just always realized after reading that book, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, that, dude, I have to intentionally develop myself, the way I think about money, the way I think about business, the way I think about running my schedule. Like, I just had to develop. And so I think one of the first things you got to do being self-employed is, like, you can't just, like, skate through like you could if you're an employee. Sometimes you could just skate through. Like, you just do the job and it gets done. The guy's like, well, it was great. You got those things done. It cost me this to pay you. It brought in that revenue. I'm fine. And sure, if you did develop, and you should develop, you probably would actually go up the ladder, so to speak, in that corporate environment as an employee, but you could still survive doing that without growth. Here, you really can't. Yeah. You're one chargeback, one bad day away from imploding if you're not sowing and putting good stuff into you. So I would say the first thing for me is, like, waking up early and spending time with God. You know, it's a whole pavers concept, like going through prayer, affirmations, like really starting to speak to yourself at a higher level, because a lot of times if you're transitioning or this is a new career, you maybe don't see yourself as that business owner yet. You don't really see yourself. You're kind of in the back of your mind thinking, like, yeah, maybe I can, maybe I can't, maybe that person's just special and I'm not. So I think when you start to, like, declare and speak out your mouth, like, who you need to become to be that, like, maybe that's like, I'm disciplined, I'm focused, I'm great at serving families, I have empathy, whatever that might be. You start speaking those, you visualize your day. I think it's important as a self-employed person to visualize yourself succeeding and doing the things you need to do. I think you got to go out and work out. I like doing it early in the morning, reading to develop myself. It just helps really put myself in a position where now I'm going through the day with a higher level thought process. So I'm going to do better things. And then, you know, even journaling, like asking myself, how can I apply what I'm reading to my business? So when I got in this business, I knew that, man, this could give me freedom, and my ability to get there quickly had a lot to do with me analyzing, studying my game film, how am I doing on the phones, and so everything I read and listened to was really kind of like my mind was tying it to how I could apply it in the actual business. And so once you've done that, then it's like the question I always ask myself, and I put this in practice early on, I think I got it from Maxwell, was like, what are the top 3 things I can do today that would make everything else not necessary or really not important? Because there's a million things we can do. Like, to your point, like, we got so much stuff going on. So what's the 3 main things? And so then I would put down, okay, dialing the phones and making sure I'm helping families. So that's the biggest thing. It's like, when do I do that? So 8 o'clock to 12 o'clock, I'm going to dial the phones, no distractions at all. And then 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock, I'm going to take a break. And now I've given myself kind of like a little reward. If I've done what I should be doing, I'm going to take a break. If I haven't, I'm going to continue on. So it's like a consequence mindset, right? That I'm trying to force myself and set myself up and trick myself to stay on track and be disciplined in that time block. And then once I hit that 12 o'clock, I'm going to grab a bite to eat. Maybe from 12 o'clock to 2 o'clock, I'm going to make some recruiting calls. I'm going to send out some DMs on Instagram. I'm going to reach out to some people. I'm going to do some recruiting activities. And then maybe from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock, I do another quick session. And then 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock, I take a quick break. Maybe I'm listening to a podcast, writing some notes, educating myself, and then 5 o'clock back to 8 o'clock, I'm back on the phones, or say 5 to 7, whatever it is, and I'm calling families, making sales, and then I know at 8 o'clock or 8:30 when I get home, I'm going to spend an hour with the family eating dinner, hanging out, and then I'm going to go tuck the kids into bed. We're going to read with them. Like, it's all very planned out. Yeah. And so I know that if it's faith, family, fitness, franchise, finance, my schedule's got to do it's got to hold the most important thing in every one of those categories, not 10 things, not the 7th best thing, but the best thing in all those categories.
So good. You know, I think I've heard the thought several times. I'm sure you have too, as well as, like, the way you do one thing is the way you probably do everything, right? And so if your schedule's a mess, it's probably just not your work schedule. Like, your finances are probably a mess. Like, your health is probably a mess, right? And so, it's the whole concept of going from good to great. I think for me, I lived a good life for a long time, but there's that the whole concept of the next level, like, man, you just know there's something else in there. I think a lot of people feel that frustration where it's like, man, I just know there's more to it. And it's exactly what you're talking about. It's like being so intentional with your time and having it all planned out and having it, your priorities in line and actually following through on the things that you're doing is going to give you the confidence because you're making the promises and you're keeping them to yourself, right? And so that's going to give you the confidence to move forward because you're like, hey, I did the hard thing when I didn't feel like doing it, but I did it anyways. And so I know I can, when I face the next conflict or tension, I'm going to push through that one as well, right? Yeah. And so I think a lot of people struggle making that shift from employee to self-employed because they just don't have that framework, right? Yeah. Because our mind or our mentality has been one way for so long. It reminds me of the scripture, Romans 12:2. It's like, do not conform to the patterns of this world. So like we have a pattern that we've been following for so long. Yeah. It's like, but instead be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Now that's a biblical scripture, but you can take that into business context. Like, hey, you were thinking one way for so long as an employee, but you gotta renew your mind is what you're talking about. Like you gotta now go from employee to employer, right? So now I'm in charge of me. There's no longer anyone else, and that's a hard shift to happen, and it doesn't happen overnight. But what you're talking about, man, you gotta wake up. You gotta do the prayer, affirmation, visualization, and for me, it doesn't feel natural in the beginning. Yeah, because you're like, I'm sitting here, I'm reading this. Paul told me to read these things, and here I am praying at 5 a.m. Like here I am writing, journaling. Like I'm a man, I don't journal, and so all these things feel very unnatural in the beginning. But over time, they begin to produce results that you've never had before. And it's like that. What you're saying, like now I'm finding my joy not in the vacation or the day off necessarily. I'm finding it in serving people, right? Because I've been filled. Now I'm so filled. I want to pour out, and that's when I feel the most blessed. Yeah, right. Is because good. I'm living in my purpose, which is to serve and not be served, right? But you cannot. I think so many entrepreneurs or leaders try to serve out of a place of just like emptiness, where work or the business or whatever they're running feels draining, as opposed to having the right framework and starting the day the right way and being filled up and then leading from overflow. That makes sense? And so I think a lot of people, if you can just like catch what he said, man, being so intentional with your schedule and then just doing it no matter what. I think that's the key, right? Is consistency, because we can give you, the 10 things to put in your schedule and you can write it down all day long, but if you don't do it, it does no good for anyone. And so I think that's huge, man. Just having a real understanding that there is a real mental shift that has to take place if you're going to succeed. If not, like there's plenty of jobs you can take. But if you know there's something more in you, then there has to be that mental shift where I think a lot of people struggle with, right? Or and they end up quitting, going back to their old place or whatever it is. And so, yeah,
dude, think about like I think. Dude, what you're saying is so good, because at the end of the day, like this is the thing that will cascade like a roadblock that you just seem to not be able to get past. Yeah. And a lot of times just that word, think about how many people you've heard that say like, I just don't know. I don't have time. Right. I just don't have the time. And I mean, when you say that, dude, like you pretty much negate any intentionality or ability to get it to the next level. And so like the truth is, when we sit back and pause and really kind of let ourselves know that there's 168 hours in a week. And this is stuff that I remind myself of. And when somebody says they don't have time, I mean, I'm always quick to say like, hey, I love you. Did you know that there's 168 hours in a week? So let's just unpack this. I'm going to help you out here. And I'll pause and like help them out, because it helps me out, because I've said the same thing. Yeah. I think I said it last week, where so much stuff going on. I'm like, I wish there was more time in a day. But the better question is, how can I do better with the time that is in the day? And so like 168 hours, if you sleep for 7 hours a night, that's 50 hours a week. Right? If you're working 40 hours, that's 90. I mean, you still have 78 hours left over after a 40-hour work week and after sleeping 7 hours a night. That's a lot of hours, dude. It's crazy. Like, that's a ton of hours. You can work 2 full jobs, sleep 50 hours, and still have like 20, 30 hours. There's a ton of time. It's just, what are we doing? And if we're not managing it, like you said, dude, it just vanishes. Yeah. It's gone, right? It's just gone. And so I think the question is like, how can I do better with the time I've got? And when you ask yourself a better question, it produces a better thought, and then your life gets better. Man, I appreciate you, bro. I love these conversations that we get to have together. Guys, I hope this helped you. I hope this served you. Again, make sure to subscribe so you get notified each and every week. Make sure to share this. And, hey, we love you. Make it a massive week. Stay strong. Be steadfast. And we'll talk to you next week. God bless you guys.